And we are live. Welcome everybody. Welcome everybody in the comments. Everyone has already said they liked it when there was nothing there. True support. We love that. We appreciate that. Today we usually go with a three up top, but it's changed this week and we've had a bit of a substitution. We've got our regular, our chief scout, our number 9, our target man. It's Steve K. Say hello, Steve.
Hello, everybody out there. Thanks for joining.
And the little and large combination, we've gone for our Kevin Phillips. It's the killer marksman. It's Jerome Marks.
Good evening, everyone. Hello.
And our special guest. Our special guest today. It is James Rowe, Dutch expert. He's not just a Dutch football expert. He knows so much about football. He potentially take my spot, maybe if you're lucky. But we'll carry on.
Maybe.
We've got plenty to talk about tonight, guys. We've got transfer targets, young, some absolute gems that we're supposedly looking at. We're going to quiz James on them. We've also had comments from Damian Camoli about where he says that only 3 clubs will potentially be able to recover from this COVID and actually be able to spend the transfer window. We've got some news on Pablo Mari, some transfer targets which are kind of null and void anymore, and a little known player called Bakary Sagna who is actually turned the attentions of a couple of clubs, and we are hoping that news isn't true. So let's share the screen now, because real it calls. How is everybody?
Good, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Very good.
All well.
Like
All well.
All well. It's all well. First of all, we will talk a little bit about Arsenal's apparently approached Remis of France about Axel Disasi, 22-year-old centre-back, former France under-20s international. I'm hearing conflicting sources. Some saying that Arsenal, he's on Arsenal's list, but he's not at the top of it. Some saying that it was just an inquiry, and some saying that Disasi isn't the answer to plug the gap that needs filling in the Arsenal defence. Who's actually had a little look at Disasi and knows what he's about?
Yes.
Jerome, you go first. Tell me what have you got to say about Axel Disasi? Go on.
In my opinion, I think he's a very interesting player because I think he ticks a lot of the boxes that we'd be looking for in terms of a centre back, especially compared to the ones that we've had in recent years. Firstly, just looking at him, the size of him, he's 6'3". He's built extremely powerfully. And in terms of bullying centre forwards, which our centre backs haven't really been able to do over the years, he can definitely do that. He's obviously quite a young player. He's just turned 22, but he's got another year left on his contract after this. And his club are resigned to the fact that they're gonna have to let him go. I like the look of him. I don't know whether, if we signed him, Arteta would pair him with Saliba because that is quite a young. That would be quite a young centre back pairing. But I definitely think he'll go to a top club. And depending on who we let go our side, I would actually like to see us bring him in.
The rumours are that he's only been going for around £13 million because they're saying his value is probably about 30. But the fact that he's only on a year left on his contract, it looks like they're just trying to get as much money as they can for him. James, how concrete do you think these rumours are? Or do you think it's just a case of we've sent scouts out once and then the papers have drawn back that news from ages ago and put it into now?
Yeah, I think the second. I think it's I think if you do a little bit of digging, before he was at Paris FC, You know, so it just goes to show how quickly a player can change in terms of course. But when I first heard about this, I thought of Daniel Ballard in the Arsenal under-23s. You know, he went on loan to Swindon, was doing really, really well at Swindon, got injured, and unfortunately returned to the club. And if you think of the young players that Arsenal have been linked with, first and foremost, especially in these strange times, before we do anything, the best thing to do is to look at the academy and make sure you kind of blood a few youngsters through. Buying isn't the only solution. A lot of people think that it is. But as I mentioned before, when speaking to you last time, I interview professional players and managers on a regular basis. I've spoken to players in the past that have made transfers to certain clubs at a young age, and they've hardly played. And hindsight is a wonderful thing, but then they will reflect and think, oh, I wish I'd have played a lot more. Oh, I wish I'd have played a lot more. So you see now that younger players, regardless of country, are being a lot more selective. But I think it's just a case of names being linked and stuff with no real substance. But I would like Arsenal, first and foremost, before they do anything, just run a comb over through the academy and double check what we have there. Remember, we have Saliba coming back from the loan spell at St Etienne, and there's going to be lots of different options. But you have to stand tall, have to stand firm, and do your due diligence. And first and foremost, check what we've got at home before opening the wallet, so to speak.
Yeah, and that is a start reminder for a lot of youngsters who do try and make that move early. It's about game time, and although it may seem at the time that the move to the club that you dreamt of as a youngster, it could hamper your development and take you many steps back, as we've seen as we spoke about in the interview we had, and we spoke about some Dutch players who previously had moved to English clubs, and we felt that it was the wrong move. It was far too early for that move. So you're probably seeing some players now think twice about making that move to the big club. As we saw on Jonathan David, even his agent with reports that Arsenal, Barcelona, and Bayern Munich will look at him. He's even said himself that them clubs are too big a move for him to move straight away, and it should be a club maybe like Porto or something like that, who are also still playing in Europe, but it's just he knows he'll get a bit more game time with them sort of clubs as opposed to moving to Arsenal. So it seems as though younger players are thinking a bit more about their future now, instead of the here and now. One story that does kind of tie up to, it does kind of link with the Disasi deal is the Pablo Mari. It seems as if Arsenal are actually more likely to take up the Mari deal. It's £10 million on a permanent basis, I'm hearing. And Mikel Arteta likes the look of him. Steve, how do you feel about signing Pablo Mari on a full-time basis now?
Yeah, I mean, from what I've seen of him, I like the look of him. And the fact, the £10 million story, I've took a look into, and it does look like it's going to happen. There's too many crosses against this guy coming to Arsenal. I just don't think it'll happen. We're looking for a right-footed centre back. Sorry, we want a left one. So that puts him out of question. But Mari, I like the look of Mari, and from what I've heard of, it's going to happen. He can play centre back and right back. Axel Disasi, so which is always handy. But we've got a lot of centre backs that can do that. For me, there's two. The only main thing that comes out is David Ornstein came out and said that this guy's signing, but I just can't see it. It
kind of ties in not 100% of what James is saying, because Pablo Mari is not exactly coming for the youth ranks, but it's a player who we've actually got in the squad, a player who we've seen. There's no real gambles as such as we don't know how he's going to perform in Premier League or how he's going to fit in with the squad. We've seen him for 2 games at least. We've seen him in and around the squad. We know what he can bring. and that kind of ties in with the not promoting within, but knowing what you've got and paying for that, and the fact that it's £10 million, it's a bargain. Do you know many other players in the youth team, James, that you think could step it up? Because there is Zach Medley, who keeps on getting spoken of, but we don't really see much of him unless it's a cup game. Or other than that, there's not really any centre backs or defensive players that seem to be making waves in the Arsenal youth team.
No, but it doesn't do any harm to promote them, or even give them a loan spell for the season, in order to make sure that we keep them long term. It's the same way of Smith Rowe. Smith Rowe's gone on loan to Huddersfield, and he's under the tutelage of a very good manager in Danny Cowley. And we've got to really learn from our mistakes in terms of not rushing. Looking at the previous of a player, really dig deep. Look at his previous. Look where he's played. Look at his injury record. Look at lots of different things before opening the wallet. Because I think, especially in the times we're in now, I think when we get back to some kind of normality, you're not going to be seeing £1 million transfers when you've got countries that have a shortage of PPE, for example, or difficulties with budgets, or people being furloughed, or clubs struggling. I think it'd be naive to think that £1 million transfers will still happen in that respect. So I just think I just like Arsenal to urge on the side of caution, really, and just before rushing in, just check again that it is the player that we want, it is the player that we need for the long term, and most importantly, it's the right character.
Yeah, 100%, and that's probably one of the most important things. It's the character, because if there's something we've fallen short on when it comes to bringing in players, it's the character of the player, and it being the right person to sort of fit in with the team. I'll move on to a couple of actually no. Seeing as we're speaking about this, Damian Camoli came out with comments the other day, basically saying that once this pandemic's over, there will only be 3 clubs that will be able to spend money. And from the comments you just made there, James, it kind of rings true. We know the clubs, or we know the obvious will be Man City, but who do you think the other 2 clubs will be that he's saying that will be able to spend money? Jerome?
Well, probably Newcastle now. They could be one. Man United have always got a lot of money, haven't they? So just because commercially they're so big, so probably them 2, I suppose. Yeah,
and what we're saying, Man City have got to sort of hold it down because they've had their knuckles strapped, and Liverpool maybe, but yeah. He may be saying spend big, but clubs are surely still going to spend. There's still got to be an element of spending. Like, players are going to go out. There's going to be players that don't want to be at the clubs, so they're going to be pushing for a move. That brings in money, and then surely you can spend the other way, or to get in replacements. God forbid that we lose Aubameyang, and we got to have Martinelli up top or Nketiah up top. I'm sure they could do it over a certain amount of games, but as I've said before, playing an 18-year-old up as the main striker for a big club like Arsenal will probably be a bit too much for him, as we've seen with players like Rashford and many before who get injured just from overplaying.
Yeah, it's a very out there comment, isn't it? I mean, it's a very out there comment. It's one that I don't know possibly Harry can sort of say that when you don't know what players are going to leave other clubs in the summer transfer window. I mean, for instance, if Harry Kane went from Tottenham, then that makes Tottenham one, doesn't it? Because obviously they're going to have a lot of money to sell. If another club sells their superstar, then that's going to be another club. So then you've got 5, and so on and so on. So it's an out there comment that,
I think no one knows. Everyone's guessing, and they're making assumptions from common sense. The common sense is if you're asking players to take a 12.5% pay cut, you can't then go out and spend or warrant spending 150 million pound on a player or two players, because it's never going to look good. Players understand that there is going to be a certain element of spending. They're going to understand that, but you're going to have to think twice maybe before you do actually make that spend, because there's that moral element that clubs do have to have. Arsenal been, I've said before that they like we said, promote within, but they're also looking at a lot of young players from what I'm hearing, and that seems to be the general pattern. One player that I know that they've looked at is Gabriel Veron. Everton put a bid in for him earlier on in the season, and it's supposedly Arsenal are keeping tabs on him with the influence of Edu in the director's box being using his Brazilian influence. It seems as though we might be able to get a foot in for this Veron. He's a very good player, skillful, very quick, very direct, can score goals and get assists. 17, he's already played for the Palmeiras first team. James, do you know much about him?
Only really about his club and his age, and he's very, very young, and obviously he's an audacious talent. But then again, this is what I mean about the character of a very young player. You know, a Brazilian player coming all the way from South America to London to potentially play. For example, Martinelli is a little bit older, but he's no doubt a fantastic talent. But you know, do we warrant spending the money on a player that is that young, for example? You know, you can't. You wonder. I wonder with the transfer window going forward, with the money available to clubs, is player exchanges not the way to go? You know, in terms of spending money, you know, like it's water in some cases, may not look at, especially the bigger clubs looking at potentially player exchanges. But he's without doubt a great talent. But you wonder, especially with his age being so young, you know, not every Brazilian coming out of Brazil is a Neymar, for example. Not every Brazilian coming out of Brazil is a Juninho. So you know, you got to really be careful. And I think that we could look elsewhere in that respect. But as I say, that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, I know, Steve. You've had a good look at him. What did you think of him?
Wow. That's what I thought of him. Wow. 17 years old, likes to play on the right, built like a 25-year-old. Just knocks defenders all over the place. Everton tried to get him a little while back with a 13.2 bid. I mean, they laughed in their faces. He won the Golden Ball in the Under-17 World Cup. Then he made it into the Palmeiras first team. Got onto the subs bench, 3 subs appearances, scored 2 goals, 1 assist in those 3 sub appearances. Got, you know, where's the money? Go and get this guy. You know, he's something else.
Steve don't care about characteristics. Coronavirus is like, put the money down. Get him in. Him and Martinelli are best friends. I want him.
If we're talking from a footballing point of view, like I said, wow. People who are watching today, do yourself a favour. Go and have a look at this guy. It's something else.
Yeah, no, he is a real talent. Winning plaudits from the likes of Bebeto, and I think that the fact that he is playing first team for Palmeiras already shows that his mentality is pretty strong. It's just like James said, it's the moving across the other side of the world, which is a completely different thing. And whether being able to handle playing first team for your local team and being able to handle first team for a big team in Europe are 2 completely opposite things. So, yeah, although Gabriel D'Souza Veron, who was named after Sebastian Veron, would be a great signing for Arsenal, and a kind of a sign of intent in the direction they were going in. Because if they were going to spend what would be around 20 to 25 million for a 7th or for an 18-year-old, it would be when we'd be able to sign him. It would show their vision is the long-term view for the future, and not necessarily just the here and now. A couple of players who we've been linked to, which again seems like they just keep rolling over with the same stuff again, is Kazawa and our friend Nabil Fekir. The papers keep on coming out with quotes about Fekir. Previously said he would love to play for Arsenal. It would be a dream to play for Arsenal. But that's all it seems to be. It seems to be old quotes which they're bringing up and saying Fekir wants to leave Betis, and is Arsenal a destination? Could Arsenal be the destination for Fekir to replace Ozil? If he would go Arsenal, do you think he'd be able to take the spot of Mesut Ozil, Jerome? Or do you think it would be too much for him? Do you think it'd be the right signing?
I don't think he's a player that we should go for, to be honest. I think he'd cost a lot of money. I think I think Liverpool tried to sign him, didn't they? Maybe a season or two ago, but I think he might have failed a medical. He had a dodgy knee.
Yeah.
He's undoubtedly a decent player, but I don't think he's someone that we need at the moment. So yeah, not for me with Fekir.
Yeah, he's probably cursing everyone who speaks about his dodgy knee, because he's still managed to go for a season, played 27 games for Betis so far. I think he's got like 7 goals and 6 assists. So for someone with a dodgy knee, that's not too bad.
He'll put a red shirt on, and that will soon change.
He'll take one look at our medical staff, and his knee will buckle.
Yeah.
Another one is Kazawa. For me, it's a no-go. It looked a little bit promising earlier on in the season when his contract had run out, or was running down, and we were linked with a move for him in the January transfer window. I did hear that Mikel Arteta vetoed that deal and said he wasn't the kind of player that he wanted in the team. And then again, papers are recycling old news, putting 2 and 2 together. And then the day later, they're saying that PSG could make a dramatic U-turn to keep Kazawa at the club. So be careful, people, because these are the stories that they're drawing you in with. Yeah, hook, line, and sinker. And then when you're there flipping on the end of the hook, bang, they've got you. And they say Arsenal miss out on again. That's a key one. This player, they give you a player, get you hyped up, and then they say Arsenal miss out again. Don't fall for it. Do not fall for it. One of the big ones. This is a big talking point. Because our man who's not here today, the chef. I don't know what he was cooking up when he told everyone this, but he said he said this like it was the gospel truth. He told me that Saka had signed a deal with Arsenal. It's not the truth. Arsenal held talks with Saka in February. Since then, talks have not gone on. They have not continued. The coronavirus has made it a bit of a null and void section at the moment. They can't really do anything, but a 5-year deal is on the table at 40 grand a week. But seeing as the situation's a bit sticky at the moment, Borussia Dortmund and Manchester United are now eyeing up the 18-year-old winger. The last thing Arsenal need right now is for one of the biggest prospects to come through the academy system to then go to either Manchester United or Borussia Dortmund after Sancho's, or even doing the round trip like Jadon Sancho. We don't need that. That'd be even worse. James, how bad would it be for Arsenal if they were to lose Saka to Borussia Dortmund or Manchester United?
Be very bad. Be very bad. I mean, my last Arsenal match that I went to was Sheffield United at home, the 1-1 draw in January.
Mm-hmm.
And he was the best player in the park in an Arsenal shirt. He was brilliant. He was going forward. He was looking for space. He was cajoling fellow teammates. Fantastic. And as you said, 40 grand a week is an awful lot of money for the normal man on the street. But this kind of reminds me a little bit of Ashley Cole. I'm not trying to parallel in terms of talent, but Arsenal lost Ashley Cole because they didn't want to pay him the money. And look what happened. This is one of the finest left backs the country's ever produced, let alone Arsenal. And Arsenal lost him because they were penny pinching enough over, I think it was £5,000.
It was.
£5 grand, yeah.
They've got to learn from their mistakes and offer him as much as they deem is necessary. I mean, I don't know Saka. I don't know. I don't think he's greedy, but Arsenal have got to learn from their mistakes and maybe go, I don't know, between 50 and 60, just to be doubly sure that you get him over. Get him over the line, because if they offer too little money, then the advances of Dortmund and Manchester United might be well attractive. But he's been a breakout star for us this season. I mean, when I've watched him going forward, he's not scared. He's not scared of running at defenders. We don't have a lot of that. So it's a player who can open up space. I mean, as I say, the Sheffield United game against a very good team, and Sheffield United are a very good team. I thought he was the best player in the park. Okay, we didn't win that game, but I thought he was brilliant. And I just hope that Arsenal learn from their mistakes and pay him what they think he's worth, because that's what it's about. It's not about penny pinching. It's not about trying to get it just right. Every player wants to feel wanted. When you ask players about why they transfer to different teams, regardless of whether they're old profs or they're playing at different levels in Europe, when you ask them about playing for certain clubs, the one common denominator is always, they made me feel wanted.
Yeah.
They made it. They really gave me the feeling that they wanted me. So if Arsenal can show that to Saka, then hopefully we can tie him down for the long term.
Yeah, I think we all thought as Arsenal fans that the Saka signing was pretty much cut and dry. You come through the youth, you're earning 2-3 grand a week. Come on, we've offered you 35 to 40. You sign on the dotted line. Don't worry about bringing your agent in. That's how we're thinking. But as the time goes on, it starts to get a bit more worrying. It starts to the contract negotiations then start to get a bit trickier, because, like you said, other clubs probably thought this was cut and dry. Now, this contract's still not been signed. So obviously they're thinking about something. So other clubs start coming sniffing around. I know you're a big fan, Steve. How bad would it be if we lost Saka?
It'd be absolutely best if we lost Saka. It would just reverberate right through the club again, through the fans. It will put us back. It will send the message to all our other youngsters that they would be able to leave as well. But it would be terrible. The only thing is, I mean, I'd like to ask James to see what he thinks as well. But what do we do with Saka when Tierney comes back? I mean, does he go back on the bench? Do we stunt his growth? But it would obviously be a bad thing. But going back to the, I don't believe the stories. Whenever Arsenal or a young player or one of our top players is linked to going somewhere, the first club that comes into it is Manchester United. And because it's a young player, they think, because all our young players go to Germany, they think, what club should we pick out this time? We pick out Dortmund. So I think it's a lot of hot air. I don't think he'll go. I'm more interested to see what they're going to do with him when he stays. But that's what I'm more interested to see, what they're actually going to do with him.
Yeah, I think as you said with Sancho, I think the difference with Sancho was regarded as a hot prospect when he was at Man City, and they were sad to see him leave, but it wasn't the end of the world for them. Saka's actually playing first team football for Arsenal and has been one of the best players over the last season. So if we were to lose him, that's a big problem.
Massive.
Yeah.
Massive
Can I add?
problem.
Can I add something?
Go, Jerome.
With Saka, I think it's a very rare case what he's managed to do, because he's going to get offered a nice new contract after his first season on the back of playing most of it out of position. Now, what other player do you know that's played so rarely in their natural position, that's just come on the scene and then has got offered a big contract on the back of that? He's done so well.
Yeah, no, he has.
Yeah.
And adding
would
to
everyone offer him more? Would we offer him more than 40? Should we have offered him more?
I would.
Would you have
offered?
Go on.
I wouldn't have offered 40 for a start.
Oh, really?
If it was me personally, I would offer it in the first instance between 50 and 60, just to show the tone and just to set the tone that we are serious.
Yeah, makes sense.
That's what you've got to change. You've got to change and make sure that you're setting a serious tone, and that the player knows that you want them. It's simply not the case of just, our accounts allow us to offer you this, so therefore we're going to offer you this. Because if Dortmund come in and if Manchester United come in, it's not just simply the money, which is a lot more. It's also the opportunities that are a lot more. You know, Dortmund are, one of the biggest clubs in Germany. Obviously, Bayern Munich are absolutely mammoth, but obviously Dortmund are going toe to toe. Manchester United, arguably the biggest club in the country, and it's so we've got to be serious. And it's just my personal opinion, but I would have gone in the first instance between 50 and 60 as a starter.
Yeah.
Wow, because for me, I thought 40 was more than enough. I mean, if you're talking about a first-team player, then it's slightly under. But if you're talking about someone who's come through the youth ranks and it's their first big contract, I would have thought 40 would have been enough.
I'll tell you what.
What would you go for, Jerome?
I don't know, but I wish James was doing the negotiations with Ashley Cole's contract. Then he wouldn't have gone.
You would have thought we've already been bitter with the Gnabry situation, wouldn't you? You would have think that they would look back, think of that, and think, well, hold on a minute. This offer like an extra 20 grand. Get him into the get him into the office. Say to him, a player at your age would normally get 40, but we think so much of you, we're going to give you blah 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 60, 70 grand a week, and straight away, if he was wanted, and he'll sign on the dotted line.
And I think that he will. And you need a balance, because what you can't do is, which is what a lot of fans have moaned about us doing, is like the Mesut Ozil situation. We can't go giving someone a contract that we can't really keep up with. If we go giving Saka a contract where we're giving him the world, then what's he got to fight for? What's his motivation? And I think we need to make sure there's a balance, especially with young players like such as his age. I think we can't go all out and give them everything they want and need. But what that message that will send, if you do give them in the realms of what James is talking about, it says to young people, if you do your thing when you get into this team, you'll be rewarded with it. And that's never a bad message to send to any youngsters. We're gonna step into James's house now. And we're gonna ask him about a couple of Dutch players. Steve, you could do the honours. I know you had a couple of names on the list. I've had to tell Steve to put away his Christmas list of players. we haven't got all night. But we don't speak about Stengs too much, because we will be releasing the full interview with me and James next week, and where he goes into a little bit about Stengs. But you can mention a little bit, but
well, no, that's fine. That's fine. No, I'll just say I like, as everybody knows on this channel, I love to look at young players. To see which ones are coming on and which ain't. There seems to be a good academy coming through from AZ Alkmaar at the moment.
Absolutely.
two of the players that I've admired from afar is Bodu and Kuipermeister. And I just want to know what the feelings over there, or is it just because seen highlights and they've shown us the best highlights, or are they really something that's going to come on in the future?
Well, there's a lot of talk about Bodu first and foremost. He's physically very strong for his age, and he's got a great physical presence, especially out on the pitch. He's very, very good.
Yeah.
And Coldman as well. For someone to dictate the game in the midfield in his position at his age is also very impressive. But this RZ team hasn't fallen out of the sky. This RZ team, RZ made a decision about 5-6 years ago to really put their eggs in the basket in terms of youth. They created a new training complex where they kind of had it that every changing room that the youth play in gets closer and closer to the first team, so it gives them that incentive. And they're really reaping the benefits of that now. And as a touch when speaking to Kieron as well, Calvin Stengs done tremendously well to come back from a terrible knee injury at a very young age. People when he sustained that injury, everybody thought, how will he come back? And I said they've got a really good nucleus now. I mean, they're going to be playing in the qualifiers for the Champions League next season. They've got a good manager as well in Arne Slot, who was the assistant to the previous manager John van der Brom. So it's no fluke the players that they're producing, but it's mainly down to the emphasis that they put on youth. And I think that, especially in the Premier League, guys, that can be forgotten. Everybody has youth academies, but they don't particularly want to use them. And RZ have put themselves in a position where the academy has been the nucleus of their team, and they've gone on to finish second in a somewhat prematurely ended Eredivisie season.
Yeah.
And that's no mean feat because I mean PSV, Feyenoord. There's some good teams in that league. So for AZ to come second. Is really good. Did you speak about Badu? You was asking about Badu as well.
Yeah,
sorry?
Badu as well. I mean, Badu. Yeah. He seemed that he had links with Arsenal. Is that just something out of the blue, or is that just paper talk?
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
But as I say, it's just my personal opinion. I mean, for example, here in the Netherlands, from the other side of it, from the Dutch media, before the corona outbreak, you had the likes of Donny van der Beek, who was going to be leaving Ajax. You had the likes of Daniel Marlon before his injury, being with him away to PSV. Denzel Dumfries, the right back of PSV. Cochu at Feyenoord as well, who's apparently rejected offers of a contract extension. And as I said to Kieron on the podcast that I did with him previously, the Eredivisie is somewhat an acquired taste. But there's always been very, very good players in this country. It's kind of like the lifeblood of how the system all works. But you've also got to remember that when you are a professional club in the Netherlands, you have to hand in your accounts to the Dutch FA every year. And if your accounts don't add up, or you are spending beyond your means, you receive sanctions in the form of points deductions, fines, and if you don't heed any warnings, your professional license can be revoked. And you imagine the Premier League. You imagine the Premier League starting something like that. Here, it's completely normal for clubs to be financially supervised and put into like category A, B, and C. And that's why you see RZ Alkmaar in particular really that's why you see RZ Alkmaar in particular really going for, and investing heavily in youth.
Yeah, it's so like Ajax have always really had it their own way, regarding the academy and youth.
Yeah.
So with AZ doing what they're doing now, and with the players that I just read out to you, James. There's no coincidence that they've finished this season joint top with Ajax, so they're matching them all the way now.
Absolutely.
with such high quality over the years coming out of Holland, what do you think it is that they do that sort of make sure that they're constantly getting a high caliber of youth through their system?
Education. I can sum it up in one word, guys. It's education. I mean, I've spoken to enough players who have played coming through the Ajax Youth Academy, for example, who play at different clubs, and they tell me as well that, you know, it's not just the education on the pitch; it's the education off it. You know, you're taught how to show respect to others. You're taught how to show respect to your teammates, to show respect to your coaches. And the coaches that they have are an extremely high level as well. But they are really very early taught about the theory of coaching players and coaching and the backroom staff, that everybody has a role to play. And that, you know, you have to, the whole backroom staff work together as one. And also, if you are a foreign player coming to Ajax and you sign for Ajax, it's stipulated in your contract that you have to learn the language. It is the same as Bayern Munich, the same as Juventus, the same as I believe Barcelona as well, where you first learn Spanish and then you learn Catalan. But here, the expectation levels, the young players from a very young age, they're aware of their responsibilities. And that kind of grows every group that they go up. So I would sum that answer up in one word, Kieran, and say that education is the reason why the conveyor belt of players is still going after all these years. Yeah,
was it players come out a lot more humble maybe than some do over in England as well?
Absolutely.
Jerome, did you have a question for James?
Yeah, I mean, obviously he signed for Chelsea now, but I think we were linked with him. Hakim Ziyech from Ajax. What do you make of him, and is he a player that you thought we should have been in for?
Yeah, I think he'll do well at Chelsea, providing he plays regularly. I've no doubt that he will play, but obviously the youth that Lampard has shown him, the young players, will carry that on. And the curious case of Ziyech, you know, he started out at Heerenveen. I mean, I interviewed Joey van den Berg, who used to play for Reading. When I spoke to him, he was playing for Nijmegen. And he was saying that he also played at Heerenveen along with Ziyech. And you could see from a very young age the talent that he had. And everybody was kind of umming and ahhing, you know, and then he was at FC Twente. Yeah. And he turned down Sampdoria when he was at FC Twente. And everyone was surprised. And then he made the move to Ajax. And, you know, he's a very humble guy. I mean, he was heavily criticised here in this country when he chose to play for Morocco. I mean, it was unbelievable how people were saying, I can't understand his decision. Why did he decide to play for Morocco? And he summed it up. He summed it up in one sentence. He said that I have family links in Morocco, and my father, who's passed on, is buried in Morocco. So he feels a real attachment to the country, and you know, he's a very humble guy as well. Fantastic player, and he's got a great passing range. So I have no doubt that he will play. You wonder about Lampard's decision making about the team going forward. But I think for 40 million euros, 45 million euros, I think they've got a very good player on their hands.
Yeah, a lot of Arsenal fans were cursing at the fact that Arsenal didn't put in a bid, especially when it was for 45 million euros. But it seems as though it feels like you can now, with the likes of Thomas Partey's minimum release clause, Ziyech going 45 million. Is 45 million the new 100 million? Because before it just seemed like you weren't going to get a player of any ilk unless they were either unknown or reaching towards the £100 million mark. It seems to have sort of slowed down a little bit. So yeah, we're going to get our questions in now. First question from Kevin Mark. I'm guessing this one's to James. We'll put this one out to James. Go on. Hold on a second. What are your thoughts on Van der Beek linked with Arsenal? I could tell you that one. Mark, you've definitely not watched my transfer exchange 2 weeks ago.
Dennis Bergkamp spotted him. You never know.
I hope that the links are true. I really do. Donny van der Beek, especially this season, he's had a tremendous presence and he's added goals to his game. I mean, I feel quite old because I was at the game where he made his debut and he scored against Mulder back in 2014, I think it was. And he scored on his debut against Mulder in the Europa League. And I would advise listeners and viewers to check out the highlights of the home match against FC Utrecht from last November, where he scored 2 goals. And the second goal in particular is a great finish. And, you know, he's got so much determination. Here in the Dutch media, he was linked with a move to Real Madrid. And that hasn't gone away. There's kind of been rumours of maybe one of Bayern Munich or one of Real Madrid coming in for him. But he's also a great lad. You know, he was a tremendous friend of Abdul Haq Nouri, who suffered the cardiac arrest. And Donny van der Beek, Donny van der Beek, along with Frenkie de Jong, they would go to visit him. They would kind of chat to him. They would kind of let him know that he's not been forgotten, because they all came together in the youth setup. They all came through together. And
it's that bond that you spoke about.
The links are true.
It's that bond that you spoke about. That
in the Dutch media, the linking him with Madrid hasn't gone away.
It would be a great signing for Arsenal. Personally, I don't see it, but I'd love that to be true, because he's definitely a player in that central midfield that we could do with. Our next question is to the panel from Sam Greenwood, our regular. He's a guest on our show many a time. Is Mari really being bought just because he's left-footed, or can he bring something to the table? Jerome, go on. You can answer this one, because I'm.
Yeah, I don't think he's being bought just because he's left-footed. Because I've got a 2-year-old nephew and he's left-footed and he hasn't been signed up. So. No, I think you got. With Mari, because we haven't really seen much of him, you've just got to go with Arteta's judgment, and he thinks he's a decent player rather than he's just left-footed. But yeah, I think time's going to tell on this one, because none of us have really seen enough of him against Premier League players. You can watch him in other leagues, but you want to see how he performs against Premier League players, and so until he does that, the jury's out on him, I reckon. Or I'd say jury's out on him.
One thing I will say is he had his first game in the FA Cup, wasn't it? And his second game was against Burnley. Burnley's a game which, if you're going to get a baptism of fire into the Premier League, it's definitely against Burnley. They're not going to let off one bit, and especially against a new defender. I'm guessing they probably would have targeted him. But how often do you get to actually look at a player in your team, in around your squad, and play for you for 2 games before you judge whether he's good enough to be in your team? It doesn't happen. You can't. It doesn't happen. And I think that our scouts have seen enough of Mari. I think, in all honesty, we've seen enough of Mari to warrant £10 million being thrown at him to fill the gap of a player who we could probably get more money for if we sold, for the likes of Mustafi, who's hit a bit of form, Papa, who could probably get some money for from a team, maybe Italy or Germany again. So I don't think he's being bought for his left-footed. I reckon there's actually a player in there. A question to James. Arsenal being linked with Orkan Kaku from Feyenoord. What do you have to say about him? Again, this was a question I released in the interview with James. Can't speak about him, James, but we will be releasing the full interview on Sonny TV Arsenal exclusively. The full interview will be next week. But James, go on, tell the listeners about Orkan Kaku.
Okay, I'll start with him, and then I'll give a final note about Pablo Mari, because a lot of people might not know he played here in the Netherlands. Kaku is a very good player. He's a very young player. He's an extremely confident player. You see that with the, making being in the starting lineup for Feyenoord, being involved with goals and assists, and an experienced manager like Dick Advocaat doesn't put you in the starting lineup regularly if you're not good enough. And so he definitely is good enough. And the rumours coming out of the Netherlands, I read today that he's turned down a second offer of a contract extension. But as I mentioned when we spoke, I think the best thing to do in this particular case would be to buy him and own him, because I don't think he's full stop. I just think he's worried about the train's about to leave, and if he doesn't get on it, what if?
Yeah.
So maybe buying him and loaning him back might be an option. But if I can just say about Pablo Mari, a lot of listeners and viewers might not know, he played in the Netherlands for NAC Breda back in 2017, I believe it was 2016, 2017 season, as far as I'm aware, and he was captain of the club as well. And that was a massive surprise to him.
Wow!
He'd only just arrived in the country, and the manager of NAC Breda, Stijn Vreven, he said, "You're captain." He said, "What?" He said, "Surely there's other Dutch professionals here that can be captain of this club." He said, "I've only just arrived." It wasn't that he didn't want it; it was just pure surprise that someone who was completely new would be captain of NAC Breda, even though they're in the first division. They're a great club. They've got a fantastic support, especially at home. And then they managed to avoid relegation that particular season. And, so he captained, one of the most famous clubs in this country. You wonder about, why Arsenal are buying him. As I say, I'm not trying to be too cautious, but maybe rather than just spending the money, as you say, as you mentioned earlier, Kieron, you've got the majority of players taking a 12.5% decrease in wages. So any money being spent going forward, it's really got to be on point. So you wonder if maybe a loan extension would be the order of the day.
Maybe, but then again, a loan. How much was the initial loan? I can't really remember. But if you're talking about a loan extension, it's more money that you're going to have to output. And if you're going to sign Mari up on a 2 to 3 year, say a 3-year contract, then maybe it's the long-term approach would be to sign him up on a permanent, which would save you more money.
Yeah.
I
reckon why they're signing him. I reckon the reason why they're signing him, and I think Arteta knows this, is that he is a better player from what I've seen. I mean, I know it's only 2 games, but he is a better defender than what I've seen of Holding and Chambers, who's injury prone, and Socrates. It's early days, but I honestly think Arteta can see that, and that's why he's going to buy him for 10 million.
Yeah, from what I've seen of Mari, he's a better footballer than Papa. Like that's obvious. He's a better footballer than Papa. Defender, I don't know. I've not seen as much of him. But
yes, exactly.
When it comes to football, Papa is not my cup of tea. Let's just say that. One for me. If Abba leaves to Madrid, can we go for Isco as an Ozil replacement? That's the first time I've actually heard about anything about Isco or even using him as a make weight. I'm not too into swap deals. If you're asking if I'd swap Isco for Abba, I'm not too sure. I think we need to, if we're losing a 30-goal a season striker, we need to get in a striker, because I don't think that Lacazette is the answer to Arsenal's problems up front, and I think we could probably get some money for Lacazette. So I think the smart thing would be to move him on while his stock is still relatively high-ish. Because I don't think it will get any higher at Arsenal, because I just don't think we play to his strengths. So personally, I wouldn't be bringing in Isco for an Ozil replacement. I think he could do an adequate job, because I think Isco is an unbelievable player, great to watch. In my eyes, I just think I want Arsenal to go down a different route. I want Arsenal to go and start again. I don't want names. I'm not interested in names. I'm not interested in egos. I want us to get the right characters to bring in. I'm really not fussed about how much they spend on a player. He just needs to be the right player. Because previously, I don't think our best players we've ever bought have been the most expensive players we've spent money on. And that just goes to show that you don't have to spend money to get the right player. Question to Jerome. Here we go. Where has it gone? Lost it. Where did I just lose that? I can't find it. Finishing second one. Oh, unbelievable. That's not even a question. I just saw a question to Jerome and I can't find it. There it is. Question to Jerome. Would you sign Danny Ceballos for next season?
That is a good question.
Wait, just put something in there quickly, Jerome. Based on the situation we're in now with the pandemic, not before, now with the pandemic. So the situation where we potentially won't have as much money and signings might not be as prevalent as what we thought they would be.
I had a good answer for that as well.
With Ceballos, for me, it depends how much money he's going to cost, and it also depends if we sign another centre midfielder to play next to him. That's my answer for that one.
Do you really see us signing another central midfielder if we was to sign Ceballos?
We need to, otherwise we're not going to do much better than this season. So if we want to improve, we've got to sign a couple of midfielders. If we want to stay as we are, then signing one midfielder isn't going to help too much. So that's why I would sign Ceballos, but only if you signed someone else to play with him.
Yeah. It's the area where we're in trouble. It's the area where we're in trouble the most. I mean, I'd be quite happy not to buy any defenders and just concentrate on the midfield. I mean, we were saying no to Fekir earlier on, but he scored more goals than the whole of our midfield last season. It just shows you how bad our midfield was. So, yeah, like what Jerome says, if Ceballos is fine, but we need to buy more, at least another two midfield players.
That is a massive problem. It is our midfield doesn't chip in with goals at all. That I'm adding wingers to that. Our wingers, our central midfielders, we're not getting 10 goals from them in a season, whereas we used to get 10 to 15 from our right and left wing each. And if you want to move up in the table, they're the targets you've got to set. If you want to get 80 points or 80 goals or whatever, then you've got to be getting your goals from your midfield and your goals from your wingers as well. And then you need to start pitching in from your defence. And they're the sort of targets we need to set. But we've not hit anything near them in a long while. We've got the last few questions. What have we got? What's he saying? Linked with Brazilian. You guys, what's it saying? You guys heard about us being linked to that Brazilian wonder kid. If you're talking about Gabriel Veron, the lightning quick 17-year-old winger from Palmeiras, yes, Pablo. We have been linked. How true the links are, I don't know. But the kid's a top player. But he is only young, so he's got a lot to learn before we can sort of start pinning him down as a superstar. But from what you've seen, or what many people could see already, he's a very, very, very good player. But he's not the only wonder kid we're linked with. There's so many. Armen Toure and his brother Hamed Junior Toure, who currently plays for Sassuolo. There's some unbelievable young players out and about at the moment, and Arsenal are being linked with many of them. It is time for us to wrap up the show. I would like to say thank you to our our special guest today, James Rowe. Thank you for giving your time up today, James. Greatly appreciated it. I'd like to thank our 2 regulars as well. That's Jerome Marks and Steve. And before James goes, James, we're going to put you... Can we put you on the main screen? No, I was just about to accidentally remove you from the screen. Do that. Go on, give your links. Have a shout out. The stage is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. For listeners and viewers that might not know, I interview professional players and managers on a regular basis, and I've been doing it for 4 years in total, 2 years for World Football Index. My latest interview with Brian Dean, former Leeds and Sheffield United and Benfica striker, was released today. And upcoming publications include David Thompson, Mickey Hazard, Kevin Gallagher, and a little bit of a wait for Arsenal fans, but also Kevin Campbell as well. Viewers and listeners can follow me on @JamesRoweNL, and also check out my interviews on worldfootballindex.com.
Thank you very much, James. Also, there are some little snippets of the James Rowe interview on the transfer exchange dispute, which was out last Wednesday. There's also another little snippet where James talks about how he thinks the Premier League will react after the coronavirus and transfers. And we will be releasing the full interview next week on Sonny TV Arsenal. Thank you again for your comments. Thank you for the support, guys. Thank you for my 2 scouts, always putting in the work behind the scenes and the homework. I actually give these guys homework on a weekly basis, and they hate me for it. But it's all good of the show. People, stay safe, wash your hands, and we'll catch you next week. Peace out.
Bye, Bear. Take care.
See everyone.
Take care, everybody.
Yeah,
everybody.
bye, guys.
Bye-bye.